Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2525. If you're into numbers, we've got 2525. So our topic, don't know where that came from. So our topic today is, where was your family when they left home for the first time? There's an interest. I remember my days so vividly. But leaving home for the first time is one of life's biggest milestones. For some, it was an exciting adventure. Definitely for me, I was exciting adventure, nervous as hell, scared, crazy, everything. It was all piled into one nervous energy. For others, it was a mixture of excitement, uncertainty, and a few tears. Yeah, we did have a few tears with Mum and I. Whether it was for a new job, university, military service, marriage, or simply the chance to build a life on their own, walking out the front door with a suitcase marked the beginning of a whole new chapter. Every family has a story about that first goodbye. Some people moved just down the road. Others traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles to a new town, a new country, or a new life. They packed up everything they owned into a suitcase, a car, or even a ship's trunk, not knowing exactly what the future held. Looking back, that one decision often changed everything. New friendships were formed, careers began, families were started, and opportunities appeared that would never have existed if they had stayed where they were. Sometimes the biggest changes in a family's history begin with one person having the courage to leave home. These are the stories that deserve to be remembered. They're more than memories. They are memories that shaped the generations that followed and helped create the family you know today. Oh my gosh. First time leaving home, I was 17. I was a very naive 17-year-old. That was 43 years ago. It was 43 years ago on the 29th of April. April 29th was, this year was 43 years. 43? 42 years. Sorry, 42 years. I was a very naive 17-year-old at the time, because I didn't turn 18 until December. My parents had to sign documents to basically give the Royal New Zealand Air Force legal custody of me because I was under the age of 18. And they couldn't get me to do anything unless they had legal guardianship. So my parents had to give them legal guardianship of me till I turned 18. That was an exciting thing. But the previous weekend had been Easter weekend, and we had arrived home after visiting my grandparents in Auckland. In fact, we got to take a really, really cool photo, and I don't want to go looking for it right now, but there's a picture of me with my grandmother and my grandfather, and I'm standing between them, and I am wearing my grandmother's WAAF uniform. WAAF stood for Women's Auxiliary Air Force. She was proud to serve New Zealand in Second World War II. Had many, many stories about it. She still had a uniform, and she had just gotten it back from MOTAT, which is the Museum of Transportation and Technology in Auckland. And she was getting ready to take it down to Christchurch to the Air Force Museum, to the Royal New Zealand Air Force Museum. The WAAFs were their own entity until after World War II, when they were incorporated into the Royal New Zealand Air Force. So I very proudly put a uniform on that day and had a picture with my grandparents on either side of me. And then we got home from that, and there was a letter waiting for me from the Air Force. Now, I knew I'd already been accepted. I just didn't know when my recruit course was going to be, otherwise known as boot camp. And so so we got home. There was a letter waiting for me stating that I had to be on a bus on April 29th, which was the following Sunday. Then Monday, I had to be on a bus, and I'd be taken down to Wellington. And then on Monday, they would board me overnight in the women's barracks at Shelley Bay, which was actually Worcester Bay for the women, Shelley Bay for the men. Put me in the barracks there for overnight, and then I would be transported by Royal New Zealand Air Force across the Cook Strait to Woodburn, which is where the Royal New Zealand Air Force was at Woodburn. They actually share the airport with Blenheim. So if you fly into Blenheim, you're basically flying onto an Air Force base. And then on the 1st of May, I would be sworn into the Royal New Zealand Air Force. And so that week, I went to school as normal. I was still in high school, went to school as normal. And then on Friday, I took around my little form to all of my teachers and got them to sign off to say that I was cleared. I didn't owe the school anything, pick up any outstanding assignments. The funniest one was with my English teacher, Mrs. Court. I went into her office, and she signed the form. She showed me that I had gotten an A on my book report for To Kill a Mockingbird. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And at the beginning of the year, we've been given the option of doing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest would be self-study, or you could do Wuthering Heights in the classroom. Well, I didn't like Wuthering Heights, so I went with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I only read the first chapter of the book. Sorry, Mrs. Court, if you're seeing this after all these years, I only did the first chapter, read the first chapter of the book. There were a few of us that were there, would be in the 7th form common room, and they eventually just all wandered over back into the classroom to do Wuthering Heights. And so I was given the questions to do and everything else, got the assignment done, got an A on it. And she asked me if she could keep it as a sample for other students that were going to be doing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I went, sure. And all that's going through my head at the time is like, I never read the book. I did that often in school. I didn't like some of the books, like The Day of the Triffids, really. A sci-fi book about plants that eat people. Lord of the Flies, could not stand that. Couldn't even read the first chapter of both of those books. But anyway, that's another story. And so then on Saturday, I spent the day packing all my stuff up. We had a list of what we could take with us, and so I was packing all my bags and everything. And then on Sunday, my parents took me through to New Plymouth with my brothers. They had to bribe my younger brothers to go. So they bribed them with, we're going to take you out for breakfast to the buffet place for breakfast. That was the bribe. So when we got to the bus station where I had to get on the bus, we said all of our goodbyes. I did all the check-in things, said our goodbyes and everything else. And Mum and Dad weren't leaving until the bus left. And my brothers were getting annoyed because they just wanted breakfast. That's the only reason they went. They didn't care the fact that I was getting on a bus and leaving home. They just cared about what was going to go into their stomachs. But I was nervous, excited, because I was going on this great adventure. There was the unknown. Never done anything. Well, I've been away to camps and all this, but this was different. I was going into the Air Force, and I was super excited about that. Scared at the same time. The recruiting officer that I had told me that I would we'd be picking up another passenger, and there'll be a guy coming on in Wanganui, and so got to meet Tom, and he comes into a story later on. He comes into a story a few years late, like a lot of years later. His name was Tom Polk, and we got on the bus, and we were in assigned seating. So when we stopped in, I think it was Levin, we stopped for a cup of tea or something, and we sat at the table together and just chit-chatted. And then, of course, when we got to the railway station where the bus disembarked, we then all were on the same transport to go to Shelley Bay, and they dropped the guys off at Shelley Bay first, then carried on around to Worcester Bay where they dropped the girls off. We spent the night there. The next day we were picked up by a bus and taken to the airport, put on an Orion. Orion. Orion? No, it wasn't Orion. It was Andover. Sorry, in Andover. First time flying backwards. It was amazing. Flying backwards was pretty cool. And then we walked up on the ramp at the back and the tail, and then sat down in our seats facing the back of the plane. It was really, and I will tell you this, it was amazing flying backwards. It felt so cool. And then when we got to Woodburn, we get off, we walk down the ramp there. We're just all standing around, hands in our pockets. And the next thing, get your hands out of your pockets, comes this booming voice from either a corporal or sergeant, I can't remember which one it was. And then we got taken and we got basically formed into ranks and marched through the base across the main road to GSTS, which is General Services Training School, which is where we're going to do our boot camp. And then we're put into this big room. We were then taken out of there, assigned to our bunks for the, they weren't bunks, they were just beds, assigned to our bed spaces and everything else. And I learned very quickly, don't volunteer for it. Don't admit to doing stuff because you'll get automatically volunteered to do things. Like people said, who here likes writing? I love writing. So I stuck my hand up. Right, you're in charge of the journal for your barrack, for your flight. And I'm like, wait, what? Learned that very, very quickly. So they said around week 2 or 3 that things will start getting a little tough with being away from family. And of course, I had not been away from my family for more than 2 weeks. So yeah, it did hit, and it did hit hard, but we were allowed to call home. They encouraged us to call home often. They encouraged us to write letters home, always keeping in contact with home and stuff. So that was pretty cool. But that was my first experience of leaving home, and very exciting adventure. And of course, they kept us so busy. You really didn't get a lot of chance to think about things, except for when you were in barracks at night and lights out. That was the time when you were winding down from the excitement of the day. You're exhausted and going to sleep, and your brain starts playing stuff on you. But that was my first time leaving home. So what was your first time leaving home like? What were your ancestors' first time leaving home like? I remember my mother-in-law telling me about the first time she left home. She got on a train from Shreveport, Louisiana, and took it up to Denver, Colorado to meet with her husband. And they were engaged, and he had been moved from Shreveport, transferred from Shreveport, Louisiana, up into Colorado up into Denver, Colorado. He was a dog trainer for the Air Force at the time. This is during World War II. And she met him at the train, and she had given him instructions. She says, my train gets in at this time. If we do not go directly to City Hall to get married, I'm getting on the next train home. And so they went straight to City Hall, got married, and we actually have a picture of them walking down the street. And when I was at Parker and Sophia's wedding, they got married on April 25th, which was the same day as his grandparents got married. And my sister-in-law said, oh, would it be nice to have a picture of them in their wedding gear? I says, that picture was taken on their wedding day. That was either just before or just after they left City Hall. She's like, really? I says, yeah. I said, that's what she got married in. She arrived on the train looking like that. They went straight to City Hall and got married. And so, that was her first time leaving home. We said, what was that like? She said, well, it was like this big adventure and very nervous about things. Was he going to be there? Would he take me to the City Hall? Was I going to get on the train to come back home? And all these questions running through her head as she rode the train from Louisiana up to Denver, Colorado. So there's the stories are there to be told. So let's go find your stories and get them told. If you want help finding your stories, just scan the QR code up here and book a 30-minute discovery call with us, and we'll get you starting on those stories, maybe ask you some questions to help trigger the memory and everything else. But leave some comments down below about what was it like the first time you left home. Leave them in the comments below. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow. Tomorrow in the tomorrow is July in the Northern Hemisphere is July 1st for those in North America. It is also Canada Day tomorrow, and I don't have a Canadian hat. I have my US hat, so I don't have a Canadian hat. I'm going to have to rectify that one. But we will be celebrating Canada Day. But stay tuned, because this week you're going to get to see one of my new hats, and you'll get to hear a song I wrote all about the 250, America celebrates 250 years. Because on the 4th of July, you guys are going to be, in America, are going to be celebrating 250 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed. It's awesome. It's going to be awesome. We're going to play you a song that I wrote. I've got a very special hat to wear for that day. We've got Canada Day tomorrow, and then we're going to start leading up to the 4th of July celebration. So with that, I am out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll